Hello, my name is William Agnew, and I'm here on behalf of my wonderful co-authors to present our Chi paper, The Illusion of Artificial Inclusion. Large language models in recent years have gotten very good at producing convincingly real responses and conversations. Relatedly, human subjects research traditionally requires interacting with humans in many different ways. You have to get an IRB, you have to recruit people, you have to schedule interviews or other activities, you have to transcribe audio or voice recordings, you have to annotate and analyze all this data. Human subjects can give you feedback. You should compensate participants in your research. And then lots of unexpected things, as I'm sure all human subjects researchers know, will come out in the process of doing any sort of research with or involving humans. So some people have recently proposed substituting large language models for humans in different parts of human subjects research. This can include using large language models to conduct interviews of participants or to be interviewed in place of human participants, using large language models to take surveys or simulate many people taking surveys, and then using large language models to take on the role of the qualitative researcher, so using them to analyze transcripts or other data from research on human subjects. So in our paper, we survey recent proposals of this idea. We study their motivations for this replacement and their stances and arguments presented on it. And we present three arguments against this practice. So to start, we conducted a scoping review and we identified 16 relevant papers and industry products, all which propose or study replacing humans and human subjects research with large language models in different ways. So we found that the majority of these proposals were motivated by increasing the speed and scale of research. Human subjects research takes a while. You have to do an IRB, you have to recruit people, you have to schedule them, and then analyze all that data. And many of these proposals wanted to use large language models to speed that up. And they're also motivated by increasing the scale of research. Again, recruiting many human subjects is difficult and time-consuming and costly. So people wanted to use large language models to be able to simulate more human participants in their research. And then about half of the proposals were motivated by lowering costs and reducing the need for human labor. So again, you need human subjects research. You have to compensate all these people. You have to compensate the researchers doing the work. And then it's also a lot of effort to transcribe data, to analyze that data, to kind of perform the tasks of a qualitative researcher. So people were also interested in replacing that labor with large language model analysis. And then half of the papers also wanted to use large language models to augment the diversity of their human samples by simulating different people, typically people from marginalized backgrounds. So, kind of a critical weakness or point of consideration in human subjects research is your sample diverse and representative of the populations you're trying to study? And often it's not. Psychology is notorious for conducting studies on college undergraduates, which are not representative of broader populations. And in general, it can be quite difficult to recruit representative samples, especially from marginalized populations that researchers may not have good connections with or who may be mistrustful of research. And then about a third of the proposals were also motivated by protecting privacy. And these proposals typically involve generating synthetic data from real data and then releasing or analyze these synthetic data sets instead of the real data set to prevent PII or other sensitive information about real people from being released. So now I'm going to present kind of the three challenges to these large language model replacement proposals that we identified. And the first is practical. Large language models are well known to be biased against marginalized groups, which calls into question the utility of this proposal for simulating diverse samples of people. Large language models also often make mistakes or make up information, calling into question the validity of any research or data or results derived using large language models. And finally, large language models reflect the values of a particular time and culture they were created in. Once they are trained, they don't change. But people and humans and culture continue to change. And also there are many, many different cultures, but not all of them are adequately represented in large language model data or creation. The second challenge is more fundamental. This is the challenge of intersubjectivity and understanding. And human subjects research relies on human intersubjectivity. This notion that a researcher and participants experience a phenomenon in similar ways. That fundamentally they are processing things in similar ways, and that a researcher's observations of what people are experiencing and then their thoughts on those observations carries some validity to what the subjects are actually experiencing internally, because internally the researcher and the subjects share many things. And this kind of enables human subjects researchers to validate their conclusions and generalizations. People are not mysterious closed systems, but rather the researchers and the research subjects work and think in similar ways. But large language models are large matrices with no such intersubjectivity. It is not correct to project our ways of thinking or interpreting or experiencing the world onto them. And even if there are, certain similarities, it's unclear how well these will generalize, or if surface observations are indicative of the same kind of internal processes. The third challenge, which is also a fundamental rather than practical challenge, is around participation and empowerment. Replacing human research participants with large language models undermines values of participatory or community-based research. Instead of bringing people into research processes, bringing communities into research processes, giving them power, asking for feedback, trying to make research serve them, we're actually pushing them out of research by replacing them with large language models. Unfortunately, participation as research subjects is often one of the few levers of power impacted or marginalized communities have over research. People can refuse to participate. They can provide unexpected feedback to researchers. They can potentially contact IRBs or other ethics authorities if violations are occurring. But large language models can do none of these things. They will always be there. They will always answer the questions you give them. They will never bring in kind of other background or experience or motivations or desires. So by replacing people with large language models, you're losing kind of this very minimal form of accountability and interaction that does exist in human subjects research. So, we believe that these challenges are quite difficult to surmount. Even if the practical challenge of large language models being biased and inaccurate and hallucinating is overcome, the two fundamental challenges we presented of intersubjectivity and participation and empowerment will remain no matter how good language models get. And while, we think that these motivations for large language model use in human subjects research are valid, especially those around privacy, these challenges are still extremely difficult to overcome. And we think there are very limited situations where large language models should be used. Again, we believe that large language models should be used as a last resort in human subjects research. We believe it needs extensive validation, the results. And we believe it should be done in a way that doesn't disempower impacted communities in research. It should be done in ways that it further empowers them and empowers them in other stages of the research process to make up for them being disempowered in the data collection or analysis stage of the research process. So specifically, maybe if you are trying to use a large language model for something like hate speech tagging, which does cause harms to human subjects doing that, we believe that you should engage the community both upstream and downstream of the large language model use to make sure that they are okay with large language models being used to represent them, and that they accept the results and the validations those large language models produce. But what we really think that human subjects researchers and Chi researchers should be thinking about is how can we further empower participants and communities in research and human participants in research. Instead of asking if we can use large language models to make human subjects research faster and cheaper, we should be asking how can we deepen the participation of impacted and marginalized communities so the research we're doing meets their needs and desires. And sometimes large language models might play a small role in this, but usually this means addressing deeper systemic issues that have little to do with using or adopting AI. Please come ask us questions or email us questions, and thank you very much for listening.